we are pleased to have the opportunity to speak with Mr. Elmo Burke, Senior Meteorological Officer at the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, or SCASPA. I got stuck on Elmo. All right. All right, so it's great to see you again, Elmo. Welcome to Good Morning SKN.
Good morning, guys.
All right, so as we talk about the theme for this year, 2023, the future of weather, climate, and water across generations, what are your comments on this theme?
When you look at the whole theme, it tries to bring together in terms of the evolution of weather, climate, as well as water over the generations. When we're talking about the evolution, we're speaking about the technological advances that we would have had over the years, the organizational structure that we would have improved so that we can manage effectively weather, climate, and water over the years, as well as the competency that the human resources would have brought over the years, because we recognize that meteorology on a whole is a relatively new science. When I say new, compared to, for example, like medicine and those others, it's relatively new, and as such, it keeps evolving. We keep learning more and more about the atmosphere in terms of how we can actually monitor and predict somewhat.
So can you let us know? We had Mr. Cromwell yesterday from the water department. He was speaking about water. We're going into drought, we need to conserve our water. How do you measure how much water we will have?
What we do at the Met Office, every 6 hours, we measure the amount of rainfall that we would have received at the Met Office. And that information is shared with our counterparts at the water department, because we look at what is collected and they do the management aspect of what we receive here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
I'm curious to know how climate change has affected your work in the field or the field in general. What can you tell us?
I would say climate change has given us a bit more gray hair. And the reason I said that, because it has increased the variability of weather and climate across the different time scales. And what we have now realized is what we are used to predicting, we're now having a wider gambit to really monitor. So for example, when you look at rainfall amounts, we're used to a certain total in terms of quantity. However, you're seeing much more variability. You're seeing extreme dryness, extreme wetness, and the gap between those two have widened significantly. And that is just from rainfall. When you now move into storms, once ago, traditionally we are accustomed to the Cat 1, Cat 2s. But what we're now seeing, climate change is now giving us more Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricanes and so forth. So that level of variability, even in terms of tropical cyclone, we are now manifesting here.
Does that affect your ability to predict adequately?
It poses a challenge, but an opportunity for us to learn more. And that's how I look at it.
I love the diplomatic answer.
Yes. So, Mr. Burke, let's talk about how long you've been working as a meteorologist. And before we started, I asked you how many of you are there?
Currently, there are 7 of us in terms of chain staff at the Met Office, along with 3 trainees. So we have a staff complement of 10 currently at the St. Kitts Met Office. And the other question you're asking,
how long have you been working in this field?
This year made 19 years.
Ooh, almost to 20.
Yes.
Big celebration.
Yes.
Nice.
Making 20 years with SCASPA, but 19 years as a Met Officer.
So what did you start out at?
AIS officer.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm just having flashbacks to. I was going to ask. Yes, exactly. I was going to ask you how you got into meteorology in the first place.
I would say I stumbled into it. However, at the same time, although I might have stumbled into it, because I have a passion in terms of science, it was an opportunity for me to really delve into utilizing my background in physics and mathematics, because those are my strengths. So meteorology utilizes those 2 areas a lot, especially as you go higher up. So it was an opportunity for me to utilize both the mathematics and the physics.
You're speaking to us again, but Daniel was here a while ago. I don't know if you remember when Daniel was here, and he gave us the graphs to plot, you know, all those things. We see exactly what you're talking about. Yes. That was a fun part, though.
Guys, if you ever felt left out, science, what? Left out.
Host.
So Elmo, how did you get into this field, and can you encourage others to get into the field since we need more meteorologists on St. Kitts?
Well, prior to going into meteorology, I was actually a teacher of mathematics at the CXC level.
Left out again.
Is this where you tell her that we were in UE at the same time as well?
Yes.
Awesome. Left out again.
You know what I mean? So, because we had the passion for the science in terms of the natural sciences, because I would have done all the sciences. And what we have found over the years, persons who have a good grasp of mathematics and physics, meteorology becomes quite easy for them. Because as you would have indicated when you had dinner here on the show, he would have showed you some of the mathematics equations. Yes. Because what we're trying to do, we're trying to model the atmosphere in terms of how it's going to respond. So we are using a lot of mathematics and physics equations to the atmosphere.
Still feel left out, but that's okay.
You don't have to be a math officer.
No, but the maths and the physics and the science and the joy that their faces have when they speak about it is like, okay, I do not know.
But I would imagine that a lot of that comes because not only is it interesting to you, but in a lot of instances when it comes to drastic weather conditions and so on, you're basically predicting how we should go about our lives.
Yes.
Rainfall, farmers, those sorts of things, you have to adjust how to conserve water. I imagine so. What's one of the most interesting things that you've had to do as part of your job?
Let's see. I would say dealing with Hurricane Irma, Maria, in 2017. It was interesting because if you recall, we would have had those 3 storms approaching us, and all 3 were basically category 4 or 5 in strength within a 2 weeks time frame. So rationing, I would say, the information to the general public, because for you to tell the general public you are expecting 3 category 4 or 5 storms within a 2 weeks period can send persons into panic mode. So managing the information flow to the general public was important. So what I would have done, I would have focused on the most imminent storm and then move on to the other and so forth. And that experience allowed me the opportunity to manage the information, recognizing that it's not just about the science in terms of the natural science, but the social science, understanding how persons are going to relate to the information that you share with them, that makes it important for us to know how to communicate that information in terms of the risk and the threats.
Okay.
So you see, you're quite included.
So other than the math, the physics, and the social science, what other training and what other subjects would you need to become a meteorologist?
I would encourage persons, especially if you're in, let's say, first and second geography. Geography would whet your appetite in terms of meteorology. However, as you move into 3rd, 4th, and 5th form, when you start to really do your CXC subjects, it's encouraged that you do math and physics because you need that foundation. If you don't have that strong foundation in maths especially, you're going to struggle as you move into meteorology. Because what we have now recognized, even to the basic level of meteorology, we are now introducing a lot more mathematics concepts into the basics. Because we have to now prep, basically, those who are coming into meteorology to become meteorologists.
So what is meteorology?
Meteorology is basically the science studying the atmospheric science in terms of, because when you're looking at the atmosphere, you want a science that actually studies how the atmosphere responds to itself, as well as the interaction to other sciences and so forth, as well as people. So that science is called meteorology, basically.
And we're not done with the frequently asked questions. We've got others lining up. All right, so here's the second one. How long does it take to become a meteorologist?
To become a meteorologist, it would take 3 years at the degree level. However, if you don't have A-level physics and A-level maths, it would take an additional year because you would have to do that prelim component for the maths and the physics. But basically, it takes about 3 years to become a meteorologist.
So you better enter college with your A levels.
Yes.
Wow.
What if you don't? It's only
If you
1 year.
don't, it's just 1 year.
Precisely, versus 2 years at A level, right?
It makes sense. Imagine you enter, you finish, you're done, you're gone.
Yeah.
And
Because when you look at the 1 year at the same time could be used as a learning experience, what to expect during your university life.
Alrighty. Okay, so how is the weather forecasted?
The weather is forecast using a lot of models, numerical weather prediction models. So we use those to give us a guidance. However, we use our common sense in terms of what we know the science should be, along with the history in terms of the climatology of the area. So we use all three, come up with a prediction, and then the forecast is just a prediction. What is the probability of these conditions happening at this particular time and place? So that's what we try to do.
You mentioned common sense. You need to explain this to me.
For example, we recognize that all models would have biases. So you have to know the biases of the models and weigh them accordingly. So for example, if a model is suggesting that you're likely to see the place drying out, however, the other models are suggesting that you will see an increase in precipitation or shower activity, and you're already seeing it manifested in terms of underground. Common sense will tell you ignore the other model. Okay. So the level of common sense you have to apply.
Okay, got
All right, weather girl in training.
I'm asking for somebody. See, I am trying to get some more meteorologists for him to work with.
All right, well, hey, there you are.
Yeah.
We have other questions. At least another question here. So what is the hardest part about forecasting?
The hardest part about forecasting is recognizing the biases in the various models, because the models are just going to try to capture the dynamics or the mathematics and the physics. So you have to now recognize each model would have biases for different parameters. So you have to recognize all these different biases and apply them collectively to come up with one forecast.
So that comes with training.
Yes, it does.
And you get to do this every day.
Training and experience. Yes,
you get to do this every day.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
All these mathematical terms, I wish I did remember. Parameters. Oh my god. Okay. So, what are some of the most important skills for meteorologists to have, other than common sense?
I would say the soft skills, and this is where you come in now, the way that you communicate the information to the general public, because you have to use relatable language, because it's a science, and too often you find we remain in our scientific realm. But what we are trying to do is come into the public realm, recognizing that putting out this scientific information is good for the science community. However, if you want persons to respond and react to the information that you put out, you have to make it palatable. So the social science aspect now would come in handy, and as well as your communication skills.
So that means Jamie did well when he was broadcasting the weather this morning.
Yes, he did.
Great stuff. Jamie, I'm getting you your props.
What are you doing? You see what I deal with on a daily basis?
I'm ensuring that you broadcasted it the way it should have.
Yeah. All right, Elmo, let's talk a bit about what you think the public could do to mitigate against the effects of climate change.
What I think we can do is some basic things. I always tell persons, because we're a small nation, we do not contribute significantly to the greenhouse effect, which causes climate change. But I always say, although we don't contribute significantly, each of us can do a little bit, whether it be changing our culture, changing the way we operate. So for example, I always tell persons, I think you will find some households have 4 persons, 5 cars. That doesn't make no sense. Why not carpool? If 3 of you are working in the general vicinity, at the same time, why don't you guys just carpool? Because that will be less greenhouse gases will be emitting into the atmosphere. So some of these basic things we can easily do.
So now is the time. So what would you say to encourage someone who is interested in meteorology and eventually becoming a meteorologist like yourself?
I would tell them, dive headfirst into your maths and your physics, because if you really want to understand meteorology, if you really want to advance in meteorology, you're going to really need the maths and physics. However, at the same time, because we are not just remaining pure scientific, I would encourage you to develop your communication skill as well as your social skills, because that would be necessary if you're going to be communicating whatever scientific information, breaking it down from a technical level down to a layman's level. So that social skill you need to develop over time. It took me a while to develop it, but I'm happy that I was able to do that.